What up, Ho Biscuits? It's your girl Skitten, back at it again. First and foremost, I hope you guys are doing well. I hope you guys are staying safe and sanitized. I have recently begun to really take the time to sit down and read, and it has honestly been so nice. When I was, younger, still living with my parents, obviously, homeschooled, I used to read a ton. Like, I used to go to the library, check out the max, which I think was 20, but they upped it to 30 for me because that's how many books I would check out. And I would finish them within a week and a half, and I would go back to the library. My dad was so glad when they finally built a library that was within walking distance from our house, because he was very tired of driving me back and forth to the library. But I've really been taking the time to do that, and it's just honestly been such a bright spot in my day. So if you're ever at a point where you're like, God, I'm so tired of scrolling social media, I'm super tired of playing video games, which I know is kind of unrealistic because video games are real fun nowadays. I'm tired of being online. Think about maybe sitting and taking the time to read something that's interesting, okay? And I'm not one of those book snobs who's you have to read the classics, you have to read nonfiction, you have to read, read whatever the hell you want. My only stipulation, and I know this is gonna make some of y'all mad, is that it has to be an actual book, okay? And manga does not count, okay? A manga where there's literally 15 words on a page, that does not count, okay? That doesn't count. I'm not saying that it's not good. I'm not saying that it doesn't tell a story. I'm just saying it doesn't count as sitting and reading, okay? But yeah, just see how that works for you. See if that's something that you enjoy, that relaxes you. And if it's not for you, it's not for you. But honestly, it's been really nice for me. So I just wanted to kind of share that with you guys. Has absolutely nothing with what we're here today for, though. Today we are here for another Overly Sarcastic Productions. This is a Miscellaneous Myths, so it's your girl Red. And this one is about Ursa Major, which is a constellation, I'm pretty sure. And doesn't Ursa mean bear or something? Anyway, I'm pretty excited to see what this video has in store for us. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started.
If you live in the Northern Hemisphere, one of the first constellations you probably learned about was Ursa Major, the Great Bear. Or more specifically, you probably learned about the asterism the Big Dipper, which is about 50% of the Great
that's what
Bear.
I've learned.
It's big, recognizable, and actually visible a lot more than most constellations,
yes,
for one simple reason. This constellation is circumpolar, which means it's close enough to the North Star Polaris that if you're at a high enough latitude, it never actually sets below the horizon. It just spins under the pole star. So rather than only being visible at certain times of year when the sun is in opposition to it, it's technically visible basically year-round. And you have to go pretty far south before the constellation ever completely sets. At most latitudes, you'll still be able to see the top part of the Great Bear, and from the perspective of Greece, only the Great Bear's paws are ever obscured below the horizon.
I never knew that the Big Dipper was a part of a greater constellation. I had no idea. But to be fair, I've never learned anything about any constellations almost ever. So, but I really did not know. I always thought it was just Big Dipper, Little Dipper, and that's all I thought it was. I didn't know. That's actually really cool.
The main body is always visible. And fun fact, the original purpose of the word Arctic was to define the area of the planet where an observer would never see any part of the Great Bear set. Arctic is derived from the Greek Arctikos, literally meaning of the bears.
What?
It's a very convenient coincidence that the Arctic is also the only natural habitat of polar bears, which aren't found in the Antarctic. It's just funny how these things work out.
Right.
Now, Ursa Major has a lot of myths attached to it, and like all constellation myths, they're not particularly consistent.
Right.
The only through line of a typical constellation myth is that eventually the constellation gets made, because that's really the only part of the story that demonstrably has to happen. But in the case of Ursa Major, there's one other consistent thread in the Greek myths of its creation, that it isn't a particularly happy affair for anyone involved. So today let's tell a few versions of the tale of the nymph Callisto, and how she got screwed over in every possible way. Okay. Now this story is retold in Ovid's Metamorphoses, Hyginus's Astronomica, and a few other places, and you know it's gonna be bad when Ovid's version isn't notably meaner than the rest. Our story begins with Callisto, daughter of King Lycaon of the Halloween werewolf werewolf video and follower of Artemis. Like all of Artemis's devotees, Callisto likes nothing more than sprinting through the woods wild and free and hunting her little heart out on all the beasts of the wood. But unfortunately for Callisto, she's a human being in ancient Greece and thus catches the attention of Zeus, who's tired of Hera spotting all his earthly escapades and wants to stress test the idea that maybe a thin covering of trees will prevent the goddess queen of marriage and familial responsibility from noticing him cheating on her for the 4th time that month.
I just ain't like, you know, if I could just wring Zeus's neck, I'd do the world a favor.
So Zeus zips down to Earth while Callisto is relaxing in a wild and ancient grove, and to further avoid suspicion, Zeus takes the form of Artemis. In this form, he seduces Callisto, which, depending on the version, she may or may not have been super into. Regardless of the specifics, the outcome is the same. Callisto becomes pregnant, and when this is discovered, Artemis is pretty peeved that one of her followers didn't maintain the maidenhood that Artemis is so big on, and kicks her out of the group. This is where the story starts getting very wibbly depending on who's telling it. In Ovid's version, Callisto is exiled from Artemis's followers and gives birth to a son named Arcas. Hera seizes the opportunity to curse Callisto for, the usual reasons, and transforms her into an enormous bear. Callisto, trapped in this form, wanders the mountains, torn between worlds and utterly alone, unable to even petition Zeus for help on account of being a bear. Meanwhile, her son Arcas spends the next 15 years doing normal baby stuff, like pretty quickly not being a baby anymore, and one day, while out hunting, he encounters a bear. A strange bear that looks at him with a very piercing expression and doesn't seem at all inclined to attack him. Even so, a bear is a bear, and Arcas moves to attack it instead. This kicks off Zeus's fratricidal spidey sense, and he finally clocks the situation, and to prevent the tragedy of Arcas accidentally killing his own mother, Zeus thinks fast and raises them into the sky, transforming mother and son into the constellations Ursa Major and Ursa Minor, the nearby Little Bear constellation whose tail contains the North Star Polaris. Spared from inflicting the ultimate tragedy on each other, the two bears spin through the night sky together for all eternity, most likely united in the feeling that there had to be a better solution than this, Zeus.
Honestly and truly, like, okay, all right, sir. All right. You couldn't have just, not turned her into not a bear anymore. You couldn't have done, you had to turn her into a whole ass constellation. Also, this pun is very funny. I give this 0 stars. That's a good one. That's funny. I'm cackling on the inside. And on the outside too, because it's funny.
Solution than this, Zeus. But other versions of the story don't quite play out the same way. Genesis Astronomica, for instance, enumerates several ways Callisto has been mythically transformed into a bear. In some versions by Artemis herself, in other versions, Zeus turned Callisto into a bear to hide her from Hera. And in some stories, Artemis is subsequently the one who unknowingly killed Callisto.
Oh, no.
In another version, Bear Callisto and her son are captured by Arcadians and brought to King Lycaon to sacrifice to Zeus for trespassing in his temple. Zeus, catching wind of this, zaps them into the stars as constellations. In this one, intriguingly, Arcas is transformed into a different constellation. Instead of Ursa Minor, he becomes the constellation Bootis, which most notably contains the red star Arcturus, whose name means guardian of the bear, and is very easily found and identified by following the arc of the tail of Ursa Major to the nearest bright star. In Ovid's Fasti, it's also explained why the Great Bear never sinks below the horizon. Hera negotiated with Tethys, one of the ocean titans, to keep them away from her waters to make their starry fate just a little shittier for him. Thanks, Hera. Arcas also has a little more going on in some stories. Pausanias' descriptions of Greece lists several of his accomplishments after Callisto was turned into a bear, most notably becoming the king of Arcadia, which wasn't even called Arcadia until Arcas introduced the locals to agriculture, weaving, and the glorious technology of bread. The land and its people were renamed in Arcas' honor, and on top of all that, he supposedly married a dryad named Erato and had several children who later began several lines of Arcadian kings.
Okay, so if your daddy is the son of Zeus, and your mom is a dryad, you are definitely some sort of demigod, right? Because it's only you're only a quarter god, but then you're half dryad, and I feel like that mix makes you some kind of non-human / superhuman, right? Okay, I might be wrong. Who knows?
Pausanias, a practical guy, can accept a legendary king being birthed by a bear and marrying a wood nymph, but draws the line at people turning into stars, and in his telling, Arcas never becomes a constellation, and even Callisto's starry fate is questioned. No matter the specifics of the story, and even no matter which constellations they get ascribed to, a few unsurprising details remain consistent.
He says, sometimes things just look like other things, and that's fine. Anyway, the king was for sure a werewolf. Okay, sir. All right.
Callisto's starry fate is questioned. No matter the specifics of the story, and even no matter which constellations they get ascribed to, a few unsurprising details remain consistent. The unfortunate nymph Callisto is transformed into a bear, and then to sort of make up for it, is divinely transformed into the constellation the Great Bear. Her son Arcas goes on to do other things, but after his death or ascension remains nearby, either as the bear-like Ursa Minor or the more humanoid Buddhist constellation, accompanying and watching over his mother as she slowly turns around the pole star. While it makes sense that the only part of the story that's 100% consistent is the part where the immutable stars take the arrangement they have in real life, it's still a bit of a bummer that we don't have more reliable through lines to trace. Overall, the one thing all the versions agree on is the same thing that everyone always agrees on.
Zeus is the villain!
It's all Zeus's fault.
Exactly!
Tell me, did you say
Fun fact, because of axial precession, the celestial pole has moved since the story was first told. Back then, Ursa Major would have been completely circumpolar from the perspective of Greece, but it slowly drifted down over time. Jokes on Hera, looks like Callisto got her feet wet after all. It's interesting when there's some singular through line that ties every version of a myth together, but honestly it's a lot more fun when that's only mostly true and there are some interesting outliers. Most people see Ursa Major as a bear, but there are versions where it's a wagon, a ship, or even a crustacean. And of course there are versions that ascribe meaning to the individual stars instead of the overall shape. The Inuit name for it is Tukturjuit. I'm sure I fucked that up. Means a group of caribou, and in Hinduism, they represent the 7 members of the Saptarishi.
And
that was really fun. I am realizing that I don't really know about a lot of the myths surrounding constellations, so I hope that Red does some more videos like that. I hope that she does some more videos about that subject, because I think it's actually really fascinating, and I'm sure more of it will be Zeus's fault, because fuck that guy. Anywhoozins, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Don't forget to leave your reaction requests and recommendations down in the comments below, and other than that, peace out, ho biscuits. It's Skittin' Lit.